How you think about your life, impact. Whoops. Get more out of life every day. Picture biting into a whole peeled orange. Not a timid bite, but a huge wide-mouthed bite. What if you lived your life like that? Living life juicy is what that life might be like. We explore how we be present and kind as we do great things. Hi, I'm John Losey, and this is the Living Life Juicy podcast. And this is where we explore how to be present and kind as we do great things. And the Living Life Juicy is a really poor translation of a verse from the Christian New Testament that where Jesus says that I've come that you might have life and live it abundant. I call that living juicy because it's like he's promising a way to live life where you just like biting into a peeled orange like an apple. And it's wonderful and it's full and it's really, really messy. And it's all those things. And I want to share a little bit about like some of the other things you see up on the screen right here are some of the other podcasts and services that we have. So if you look up here, this is the Growing People channel. That's where I put resources up for resources and thoughts and insights into how to grow people and organizations. And then down at the bottom over here, if I can get my fingers right, that's the Into Wisdom group, which is the business, and there's three aspects to it. I do consulting and coaching. I do publishing and help design curriculum for people. And then also new due to the pandemic is production. So I help people with virtual hybrid production, putting on events and conferences and things like that. If you want to find out more, you can go up to the top, this side. And if you click a picture of that QR code, it'll take you to more information. But want to talk a little bit about why we're here today. And I want to introduce you to a man named Alan Champkins, who is one of the blessings that I've experienced from the pandemic, because how else would I connect with somebody who our connection started in South Africa when he was in South Africa. And now, and we'll get into this, he's transitioned up to an amazing place. It's called the Ndubaluba Outdoor Centre in Zambia. So Alan, welcome, Alan. Glad you're here. And it's amazing what happened during the transition I was introduced to some amazing people like yourself, and I've really appreciated not only our conversations, but your posts on Facebook and in other places are thoughtful and insightful and bring in other resources. So I really appreciate that. So welcome. How are you doing today?
John, it's really great to see you. I think I must start off by saying to you, thank you. I don't think any connection is a missed connection, but in the case of getting connected with you over the last 2 years or even longer, I think it's been a real blessing. And you've helped me in many ways and given me stuff to think about. Some of your stuff on facilitation and thinking about it from a whole person perspective has really helped shape some of my work. And it's an honor to be here. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
Well,
and instead of me trying to explain to the world what you do, I want to ask you, how do you describe what you do? Tell me a little bit about where you're at now and what do you do? Describe it to everybody for us.
So my formal position is I'm the head of center at Ndubaluba Outdoor Centre in a place called Mukushi, Zambia. It's about 5 hours north of the the capital Lusaka. And I run an outdoor center that is owned by a school. The school's called Chengelo, and it's one of the top private schools in Zambia. And for years, I've dreamt of working with a school that owned an outdoor center. And last year, my dream came true. And I left South Africa in October in 2021, and I've been up here now for coming on 11 months. It's been a very different but an amazing journey. And yeah, it's a wonderful place. It really is.
Yeah. So you said 11 months you've been there?
I think that's it now. Yes.
Yeah. So you're just finishing up.
My hands because it'll give away my maths abilities.
Yeah, but I mean, this is just getting into one full cycle for you for this year. Yeah.
Yes.
And that's my guess is that you're just starting to figure out what's happening there.
I very much so. I did a global leadership course with Christian Camping International over the last 2 years, and one of the presenters, Rob Ribby, he was talking about onboarding and how it can take up to 10 months to get properly onboarded. And I would say that I am finding my feet now. That's probably the best way to put it. The Dunning-Kruger effect has been perfected.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know what the Dunning-Kruger effect is, basically the people who are least competent usually overestimate their competency. And the secret to fighting it is having that beginner's mindset, that idea that you step in, wherever you step into, no matter your experience, you've got more to learn. So yeah, it's so like, it's such a great reminder to me to step in with, be convicted and convinced of things, but hold on loosely, because when you get new information, you got to be able to change that perspective.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, I think I got the job because of 17 or 18 years of experience in the industry and a number of qualifications. And I stepped in thinking, well, here we go. You know, I'm coming into a new position. My predecessor had been here for, I think it was 25 years or 27 years. Big shoes full, and he'd left an amazing legacy. His name was Richard Thompson. And I realized when I got here just how little I know about a new country and the way things work, and how different it is even from South Africa.
Yeah, I think that's like, so when I do a lot of like training for coaches and master coaches and facilitators and stuff, and one of the markers that tells me that a coach or facilitator is ready to advance is when they go, wow, I know so little. And it's one of the most encouraging things, because first of all, it might seem discouraging to say, man, I don't know a whole bunch, but the encouraging part is, look at how much there is to explore. And so if you have an explorer mindset, if you're an outdoor person, or you're just adventurous, whether it's in the outdoors or in business, when you realize that there's so much more to what you're talking about, to me, that's like exciting. And that gets into some of this living life juicy mentality, which is, man, if there's more to explore, there's more adventure left.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I was thinking of how when we first arrived here, so the center itself is about 14 hectares in size, but about 60 or 70% of the programs and activities we do is actually offsite. Most of it is on our neighboring farms, and the farm that we are on is 7,000 hectares. So when we arrived here, it was, let's walk around the corner, let's walk here, and don't get lost because it's all bush and forest and woodland. and as we've grown, so we've explored more and managed to figure out how to get back to places without getting too lost, getting our mindset orientated. And I think in many ways that's been the same as my journey even here with regards to the programs, the people, the systems, etc. is little forages out, finding myself comfortable, uncomfortable, pulling myself back into a safe space, going back out again.
So you just remind me of, there's this American movie called The Mountain Men, which is about the explorers and the fur trappers who went into the Rocky Mountains in the United States. And there's a great line where they come across some people settlers who are moving across the mountains. And the settlers say, "Hey, haven't you ever been lost?" And the mountain man says, "Never lost. Mighty confused for a few years, but never lost." And that's, to me, is a great mindset. As we're working through our lives, you're never lost. You might be confused, but as they say, the road is made by walking. And so oftentimes that confusion leads you to the next best step, if you're present enough to experience it.
Very much so. And I think it also always goes back to, what is your foundation and what is your strength, and who are you and whose are you from a Christian perspective?
Yeah.
Because you've always got an anchor. And you can, it's great to lift the anchor up and move, but you've got a security, which when you understand who you are, and what you can do, that even when times get hard, when the honeymoon phase is over, you still got the grit and the resilience then to be able to say, no, I know I'm here for a purpose, and I'm in the right place, even though what I'm looking at emotionally at the moment doesn't feel like it.
Yeah. And so that, I did a study one time on the word shalom or salam and the concept of peace. And it doesn't have anything to do with where you find yourself. It's all about your condition where you're at. And so I compared it to, if you're into bicycling, you have spokes on your tire. And when they're out of true, you can be riding on the smoothest surface in the world, but you feel out of balance. Whereas when you have your spokes accurately trued, so the tire stays center, you can be riding on a rough road and it's still manageable because of the condition of your spokes. And so shalom and salam is all about that peace that comes with your life being trued, like a really well balanced bike tire.
Very much so. And I think more than anything, I'm learning here, we talk about what we can control and what we can't control.
Yeah.
And there's lots of things that I just have no control over in Zambia. I often, God's got a sense of humor in the places he takes me. And one of the things that I feel, one of my values is to be on time and to respond quickly to people and have people respond quickly back to me. Well, Zambia's perfected Africa time. Where it can take months for something to happen, and sometimes people just don't get back to you. And I find myself, but realizing that is, my response is my responsibility.
Yep. Yeah.
And I can't control anyone else, but I can respond how I can. I'm responsible for how I respond, and I'm responsible for what I show them still in that. Do I allow my frustration to come through, or do I be gracious about it? Do I learn patience through it? Do I learn to just trust where actually there is no other thing to do but to trust?
Yeah. And that's where, forcing my expectations and standards on others isn't fair. And, Viktor Frankl's thing of that we can, our choice, and its secret is in our choicefulness. We can give up all of our other freedoms except for they can never take away your freedom to choose your response in any given situation.
Exactly.
And that comes with a pause. But before I want to get into, because you and I can chat like this all day long, but I want people to get to know you. And part of that is, tell me about we'll call it an origin story, but what path led you to where you're at today? Tell me just some of what is in your past that got you to where you're at.
I think I'm grateful to my parents for taking me to beautiful places. They loved the mountains, and as kids, we would go on holiday. Not every holiday, but on our school holidays, we would go to the Drakensberg Mountains in South Africa for a couple of weeks, and I just grew to love the outdoors. We lived in a city, but on holidays we went out into the mountains. And then when I was about 12 years old, I think it was, 11, 12, I went to a school called Treverton in South Africa, which had a strong outdoor education focus. It was pioneering it at the time. And that really had a deep impact on me. And on just, I love being outside. I love people. What can I say? My life went a bit wayward, like all of us do at some point. And then in the mid-90s, I became a tour guide, showing people the love of what I loved, taking them out. And of all things, this is where I say God has got a sense of humor. I decided that I was going to stop being a tour guide because I was tired of sleeping on other pillows and traveling and working weekends. And I went back into sales management, and I was in it for a year, and I was approached and said, you were interested in applying for a position at a youth camp. Are you still interested in it? And I think 3 months later, I found myself working for Scripture Union in South Africa, running a camp called Glenhaven. And that was in beginning of 2004. And I've had a journey since then, working with young people outdoors, both as a head of center and as a program manager in KwaZulu-Natal and outside Cape Town. And as I said, over the years, I saw lots of people come and go. And I think that one of the weaknesses of the school camp industry or ministry, let's say, if you want to call it that, is that people are with you for a short time and then they leave, and you have very little influence in their lives again or see the fruit of your work. And I'd been for me, the model of Treverton, where you had a school that was owned an outdoor center or ran outdoor programs, was the cherry on top of the cake. And there's very few like that in South Africa or in Southern Africa. And I'd heard about Ndubaluba in about 2017 or 2018. And there was an instructor position going, but with a family, we couldn't live off the instructor salary. And then during COVID, we'd made contact with Richard. In 2018, I think there was a Christian Camping Southern Africa conference, and Richard Thompson, who was then the head of Ndubaluba, came to South Africa, and we met and chatted at the conference. And then I saw the advert, and when was it? September 2020, I think it was, for Ndubaluba, for the head of center, saying he was leaving. But it was COVID, and outdoor centers and schools and that were either closed or in survival mode. Anyway, so I left it, and we were practically on limps at Simonsburg. And then in February last year, I can't remember if Richard got hold of me or I got hold of him, and we were discussing COVID protocols. And he said to me, "I'm surprised you haven't applied." And I went, "Yeah, but you know."
What a compliment. That's a great compliment.
We closed. And he said, "Well, you know, Ndubaluba is owned by Chengelo School, so 50% of our income comes from the school. And because it's owned by a school, when the school's open, we can continue to operate. If you're interested, you've got 2 weeks before the closing date."
Make it happen.
So it happened. We made it happen. And
go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. So I went through the process. I applied. We were shortlisted. We came up in late March for an interview. I came up to visit, looked at the place, had my interviews, and was offered the position. Came back to South Africa, chatted to my wife, and it was weird. We'd never ever considered going to Zambia. If it was, you know, if we were going to go anywhere else in the world, we would go to first world.
Yeah. So tell me this. Tell me about, so you're now head of center. Explain to us what you do. What is your job? I can try to describe it, but you're the expert. What is it that head of center does at this outdoor center, Ndubaluba?
It has big shoulders.
So everything is what you're saying, like most camps.
Not entirely. So we are, the ultimate responsibility falls between myself and then the head of the school of Chengela School. So as head of center, I sit on senior leadership for Chengela School, so I have an influence at the school itself. But my job here really is to oversee the whole site. I have an amazing team. I have a site officer, Joffrey. He's in charge of the catering and the site. I have a senior instructor, Joshua, who looks after all the instructors. My job is about 25% of my time is actually running programs and on the programs, and about 75% of it is either involved in the school and running and senior management at the school and admin here, I suppose, directing, casting vision, equipping, training, sometimes ordering t-shirts.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I am, it's different from where I was before, where you had to be a jack of all trades and sometimes a master of none. Here I have an incredibly capable team underneath me, which is an absolute blessing. And my job is to steer the ship properly and make sure that it's functional and it's got a vision and it's going places and it's making an impact.
So that leadership function, not 25% around programming and the rest around leadership and strategy and organization. Is that a big change for you from where you were at in South Africa?
Well, yes and no. So when I was with Scripture Union as camp director, I was involved in everything. I ran the programs. I fixed the tap sometimes. I did the admin. I did the leadership. I did the spiritual side. Then when I was at Simonsburg Christian Center, I wanted to specialize just in the programs. And so I was a program manager. I was there for 11 years. 10 years, 11 years. And I just did the programs and getting facilitators and instructors and that. And I see it here as bringing the two that I've done in the past back together into one.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably the best way to put it.
Yeah. And I think, at least in my experience, there are times when I was the jack of all trades, master of none, because everything fell under my purview, especially if you're like in the camping world. That describes most small and medium-sized camp directors, where you're doing everything and you have a capable staff, but it's just not enough. And then you go back in the program world where you're directly involved with the facilitators and the instructors and the campers and the participants. But then it's like people don't realize when you step into what I would call a larger leadership role where you have staff to do all the doing. That's when it's really hard for people. And I imagine that you have the mindset of, well, I'm a doer. I do stuff. And to step back and trust your staff to do it, because you might be even better at them, but because you're so spread out, you can't perform at your highest level because you're doing you would have to do so many different things. So you've got to step back, and especially when you have a quality staff, and let them do their thing and let them own it so that you can steer the ship, like you said.
Yeah, very much so. And I think it's been one of my challenges here is I came in with lots of ideas and only to find that actually I need to take a step back. And one of the things is, like example with the programs, is we run a massive variety of programs here, both on-site and off-site, and many of them to places that I haven't even been yet. So there's no ways that I could say I'm going to take over from somebody in an instructor position. And certainly from my senior instructor position, he's got more technical skills than I do. So I wouldn't even want to, tread on his toes and say, listen, I'm better than you because he's an incredibly capable person. And so for me, it's been both actually, Alan, yes, cast the vision, set the direction, put the sails to the ship, but be very careful how you do it.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, empower others to be able to do the work that they are doing.
I think there's a myth in leadership that the leader has to be better than everybody else at their jobs. And I think you're in a situation of leading experts is a whole different thing, because what you need to do is honor and acknowledge their expertise and get rid of the obstacles that are keeping them from their top performance. And too often we don't even think about the obstacles we're laying down in front of our experts. And even if you are a co-expert in those things, your job in leadership is to remove barriers, not to create more or not to bring them back in.
Yeah, and I see often my job is to equip others to be able to do their work properly.
Yeah,
my job is not to be the person who charges ahead and says follow me anymore. My job is to say, actually, this is how. Let me equip you to be able to do your work. Let me create the circumstances and the environment where you are happy to be able to say, actually, my boss trusts me and my boss believes in me, and therefore I'm able to give my best.
Yeah. As long as you painted that clear vision, that you paint the target and allow them the expertise to shoot all at the same place. As long as you, and that part of a big responsibility in leadership is getting people to all shoot for the same target. And that's when you know everybody's working towards the same thing, then people are really going to work together. They'll give each other the benefit of the doubt if they know that they're all working towards the same outcomes. Now they can apply their expertise to get to that outcome. Even if I don't understand what they're doing, I know that their heart is in achieving that outcome.
Yeah, for me, I agree with what you're saying. At the same time, because I've only been here for a short time, I'm still in the process of formulating that outcome.
Yeah.
So it's been a case of, actually, how can I support you to do your job at the moment with the transition?
Yeah.
One of the challenges that I realized when I arrived here was that we had, I think it was 5 major staff changes in my coming and others leaving, and some of them were in senior leadership. And so it was quite a thing to be able to just build people's confidence in me again, and in that change that's gone through, and to be able to say, you guys, actually, there's been 5 people that have either moved or come on in senior positions in the last 3 months. And it's let's settle the ship and let's steer it again.
Yeah, it's a great, I mean, that transition right now, that unsettledness is a great opportunity to reaffirm and redefine the vision of where the school's going. And that doesn't happen with somebody walking in and just saying, here's where we're going. I commend you on your wisdom to hold back on casting vision before you understand the context in which you're casting. I mean, you got to figure out where they've been and where they're going, and make sure that it's an arc rather than a left turn. You know, it's connected.
Don't think I've got it right. Because I say, one of my biggest assets is to be able to open my mouth and put my foot in it.
Well, but again, failure is just your opportunity to find out where your next best step in growth is.
Very much.
If you don't put your foot in your mouth, you don't know what's wrong to say.
Exactly. And one of the first things that I said when I got here, at the first staff meeting we had with everyone, I said, I'm not Richard Thompson. I'm not your former boss. I'm Alan. And Richard had left a month before I arrived, just due to circumstances of work permits and a few other things. So I said, actually, I'm coming in here completely green about the ears. There's a good thing to it, in that I don't know all the systems that he had in place. And there's a bad thing to it, that I don't know all the systems he had in place.
Right. Yeah.
So please understand, I'm not him. I'm Alan, and help me to understand how it works here, and how we can all get together and build this and keep it going and make it stronger. And it was about 3 months after that one of the staff came up to me and said, "That was the one thing that you said that stood out to us the most, was you're not the same person." And that really helped us to understand you.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know, I mean, this is a huge transition. It's very adventurous in the midst of COVID, going to a whole new country and in a role that had a very strong leader beforehand. But thinking back over your entire life, not just professional career, but what do you think was your biggest and most substantial transition? And what were some of the things that helped you navigate it?
I think my biggest single transition was moving into the outdoor education Christian camping industry. I would like to credit my Mike Smallbones, who was my boss, my predecessor when I was with Scripture Union, and he really kept in fact, we still keep in contact, not regularly, but we still keep in contact, and just having people around me who were able to build that and keep it going and encourage me. And then there were key, how can I say, I think, I don't want to put transition, but key, what can I say, inflection points maybe. And the first was Richard Louve's book, Last Child in the Woods.
Mm.
And really to understand that we're not just doing this for the sake of Christian ministry. We're not saying that it's any less, but it's not just about that. There's so much more physically, psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, conservation-wise, business-wise, future-wise, about having people getting out into the outdoors, especially young people. And then in 2018, I think it was, I started to look at emotional health and its impact on the outdoors and how we facilitate and how we work with people. And Claudia Root in South Africa ran a presentation for us, or a training for us at Simonsburg. And for me, that was a massive flick, another one of actually, wow. When you consider the emotional health and the emotional needs and how it all works together, it changed the way that I work with young people. And so when I've come here to Zambia, part of me is how can I say, I like to challenge myself. And so, why am I doing things? Is this theory, like what can we talk about? Comfort zone theory is it right? Does it work? And I consistently ask myself, why am I doing this, and how can we do it better? And that's what I've come through now, is why am I doing this? And how can I do it better? Why am I running a center? And how can we run it better? And I think sorry?
I was going to say, and that's so important for everybody to, one of my biggest influence the last couple of years is a guy named Todd Bolsinger, who wrote a book called Canoeing the Mountains, which is about leadership. It's about the Lewis and Clark expedition that explored the brand new territory in North America for the U.S., and they thought they'd be canoeing across the continent when really they ran out of water and then turned into mountaineers. So what is it like to lead off the map? He also wrote a book called Tempered Resilience, which is masterful use of the metaphor of blacksmithing and forging for resilience and leadership. And one of the things that he says is that, leadership, any leadership worthy of the name, is about change. Because if you're not leading change, you're not leading, you might be managing or caretaking. And so when you're talking about that, having that mindset of, man, what's next? And as soon as I stop looking about, if you think that you're done, we're set, we're good, then immediately you're starting to fall behind. because leadership is leading change.
Absolutely. And I read something just the other day, and the person was talking about, it's not change that people fear, it's the transition that they fear. Because change is a constant, not a constant, things always change, but it's how do we adapt to the transition from one change to the next. And so, we talk about change management, but I think maybe it needs to be transition management.
Well, and the idea is that you talk with people and oftentimes they say, oh, no, I love change. Change is what I'm all about. However, as long as they're in charge of the change or guiding the change, they love it. But as soon as it's outside of their control, which you hit earlier on, one of the biggest things the pandemic did was remind us that we're not in control. And
Yes.
it's how you handle loss of control or loss of the illusion of control and how you handle that influence. And so you're right. It is all about transition. And honestly, leaders know that they have the capacity and the competency to do it, but they don't know whether they have the resiliency or the thick enough skin to handle the pushback, the blowback from the change. Another thing that Todd Bolsinger talks about is that, you measure by the mission, not by the pushback, not by the resistance, but by the mission, and always keep that mission forefront.
Absolutely. And I think that's key, is what is our mission? Why are we doing it? Why? And for me, I look at the instructors here and I think, you're at the coalface. You are the people who are changing other people's lives and having an influence on them. And what a blessing that is. What a privilege it is. And how can I, as your head of center, serve you to be able to do that better?
Yeah. So when I train people in facilitation skills, I remind them is from my perspective, we do not facilitate experiences. Because if that were the case, facilitate means to make easy. And I think the last thing we do in adventure and outdoor programming is make things easy. What we do try and facilitate is growth and learning, but we design experiences where that can happen. And whether you are the overall designer of the program or you're in the moment with that group, you're designing and managing an experience to make growth and learning easier for the group and for the individuals.
Very much so. And that's what we must never forget. And one of the things that I've come to realize is, actually sometimes people change best when they're in their comfort zone.
Well, that whole comfort zone theory, reality is you can't change when you're outside your comfort zone.
Exactly.
If you compare it to weightlifting or whatever, or physical conditioning, when you are outside your comfort zone, you're actually breaking things down that when you go back in recovery mode or your comfort zone, that's when it's reconstructed and you're able to make those connections. And too often what we do in designing experiences, keep people outside their comfort zone and they get fatigued and it ends up chasing them into a retreat zone. And they never get full value because they never, and the art of designing experiences is moving people in and out of their comfort zone at a rate they can handle.
Absolutely. And I think that's, I was on a risk management course with Very Star a couple of months ago, and the facilitator or the owner, Jeff, was talking about, now let me get this right, how we need to design our experiences or our programs so that we get the best outcome with the lowest risk. And I really like that, even when we talk about emotional security and physical safety and spiritual safety, even and social safety, which is a big one these days, is how can I put a program together or an activity together where it has the best outcome at the lowest risk.
And I'd like to talk about, when I talk about that stuff, I prefer to talk about risk management rather than safety, because safety tends to mean that I'm putting my life and my safety, emotional, physical, any other, in your hands as a leader. Whereas if I can manage risk for the overall situation, group, and context, and train people to understand that they are practicing risk management all along the way, because let's face it, we can never totally make people safe. There's always a risk of injury or danger whenever we do actually anything. But if we can help people understand that they have a responsibility in managing their own risk. Now, what we bank on is perceived risk versus actual risk.
Yes.
And helping people understand that right now we're managing behind the scenes, we're managing the ultimate risk. But you need to decide, and this is, what Tom Leahy talks about, the challenge of choice is training people to manage their own risk at where they are just taking one step in outside their comfort zone rather than ski jumping over the edge,
Yeah. No, I forgot to say that was one. Tom Leahy's talk on challenge by choice was one of the pivotal moments in my thinking on the theory behind why we do what we do. It was that was really a big eye opener.
Yeah. So as somebody who's been in this world for a while, not that we're old, but what do you think for people outside that think this is such a cool thing or whatever? What is the least appreciated aspect of growing people? Like, what do you think people just miss about what we do? And it's not necessarily appreciated as far as like, even for people who are just in the industry, what don't they get? What are they missing?
John, that's a hard question. I think the first thing that comes to my mind is that people want to grow for themselves. In other words, it's selfish. They don't want to grow to be of benefit to others.
Well, and that's, I think, a big piece in this is allowing people to grow for themselves. As a facilitator stepping in, oftentimes young facilitators will go, I had a wonderful experience. I want everybody to have the same experience I had, rather than allowing them to have their own experience.
Yes, exactly. And I think that's it's my story. Yeah. And I need to own my story. And you've got another story yourself, John. And Wendy over there has another story, and someone else has a completely different story. And I can't transfer my story onto you. I can walk the journey with you. But I need to own my story, and you need to own your life and your story also. And there's times where we'll walk a journey, just like the two of us have, where we connected for what, 6 or 7 months, almost. It's 2 or 3 times a month on stage, and then we don't hear from each other for a year. And I think that's the big one, is that I can't superimpose what I have on somebody else, because that's not their life. I can advise, I can assist, I can have empathy, comfort, encourage, etc. Maybe even walk a journey with them physically, but that's their life. It's not my life.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things. One, you'll notice that in a lot of my stuff, the word guide is so important, because guides can't take the journey for you. They can walk alongside you and advise you on different paths, but they can't do it for you. Now, you mentioned something that reminded me of, there's a book by Bruce Chapman, who's a travel writer, called Songlines, which is about the Aboriginal concept of songlines in Australia, which is a powerful thing about, everybody, they didn't talk about owning land or anything else other than owning your own songline, which is, so you have your tribe, your family group, but your songline introduces you to your spiritual tribe. And so, and it doesn't have anything to do with genetics or family. It has to do with the spiritual songline that you walk, and you'll encounter for brief parts of your life journey, your family that way. The other person who actually brought me to that book was Jimmy Buffett, who talks about songlines and his stuff. And, he's the great philosopher, Jimmy Buffett, and his, he has a great song that mentions songlines, and this idea of we're walking our journeys, and every once in a while we'll walk journeys together with people and celebrate that, mourn it when it breaks up, but celebrate it.
Yes.
because it was such an amazing time together.
Yes.
Yeah. So I want to ask a couple like quick hitting questions, and then we'll flip the table a little bit. But first of all, like, let's see, just top of your head, who are some of your heroes in leadership and facilitation and outdoor adventure? Who are some of your heroes?
Now you're putting me on the spot.
Well, you're not signing a contract. You have total permission to change your mind later. But right now, in your head, who are the first people to come to mind as examples or heroes in your world?
Wow. I think in South Africa, I have a tremendous amount of respect for a gentleman by the name of Peter Snyman, who really has shifted boundaries in the way that the whole person is facilitated, and has even gone out on his own to start doing training and getting people accredited in his own institution or part of an institution. I have really enjoyed connecting with a group from Australia called Inside the Outhouse.
Yeah, I know those guys.
I've loved it. It's just down to earth, have a laugh, be serious, have every second week meet up with people and chat about various ideas. I haven't met Tom Leahy in person, but as I said, I've found his stuff amazing. Who else? Wow. Richard Louv in his book, Last Child in the Woods. Oh gosh, Teamwork and Team Play by
Jim Kane.
Jim Kane. Love that. Yeah, there's so many people. I try to be connected. I actually all the time. My wife will tell you that I spend too much time on social media, but it's like it's on challenge course groups, it's on adventure therapy groups, it's on it's like,
yeah, it's not like you're watching the Kardashians or things like that. So
who they?
Yeah, I'm glad you say that.
I'm one of the few people who's never watched a single episode.
I've watched part of one, I think, but other than that but again, I've got my own vices, so I can't don't I would put it as the equivalent of hanging out in outdoor equipment and gear and tech equipment. That's my addiction. So I can't blast the Kardashian fans because I've got my own stumbling blocks.
Yeah, our story.
So, yeah, tell me this. Do you have like a go-to quote? Again, first one that comes to mind, author, movie, leader. What's your kind of go-to quote right now?
Wow. I think I actually don't have one at the moment. I think my paradigms have been so shifted coming to Zambia. And I was thinking about it the other day, just how the pandemic was so lovely because I spent so much time connecting with people and reading and now I am busy.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
So I can't say I have a go-to quote at the moment. It's just
Well, let me shift it a little bit then. Think back to, and this could be current or all the way back. Do you have like a favorite book or media or something that you give people? What was the last kind of book that you gave to somebody?
In the digital age of Amazon.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, it sounds like one of the ones that you recommend a lot is the outdoor.
Richard Louv.
Yeah,
would be one that I gave away some time ago. That would definitely be one of them, and recommended a number of times. Can
you say that? What's the title of that book again?
Last Child in the Woods.
Okay.
By Richard Louv, Louv.
Great. I'll make sure to put that into reference stuff.
I think that's probably one of the books that I can say of all of them that I can recommend people to read if they for getting a different perspective on how we do it and the benefits of why we're doing the outdoors and the importance of it. It's one of them.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So now let me switch the turn the tables a little bit here, and I'll give you a chance to take a breath as I talk a little bit about it. I want to give you a chance to interview me really quickly. So what are you curious about? I'm going to give you 3 questions where Alan takes over Living Life Juicy and asks John 3 questions that you're curious about. And I'll try and give, I can't promise I'll answer the question, but I'll give you a response at the very least.
Okay. I won't ask you favorite quotes or favorite books. What I'm going to ask you is, what do you miss most about shifting back to in-person compared to virtual during the pandemic?
I think you hit it on the head. During the pandemic, first of all, I stepped into the pandemic with a little bit of a head start because I've been in the virtual world for a decade leading up to it. And all my world got erased, which was tragic. 2020, March of 2020, I had a full schedule go for all of 2020 and I was shifting my business. It was all gone. And after I mourned that, and after I woes me, I thought, man, I've got stuff that people need, because I've been in, I was in GoToMeeting, I was into WebEx, I was into Google Meets, and then I landed on Zoom. And so I knew a little bit about Zoom. I had started to put together, I'd failed miserably when I worked at a large corporate university. We were moving towards webinars and we really sucked at it. So we had a decade to figure that out. So I had a lot of insight from there. I had time. I just started saying, hey, who wants to play in Zoom or who wants to play in whatever platform? And I met people from all over the world. I still remember the first week of the lockdown from the pandemic, I opened up my Zoom room and a law student in Saudi Arabia, no connection at all. He was in his dorm and we had an amazing conversation just talking about what life in America was like and like where we were going. And it was him just reaching out saying, I want to connect with somebody because I'm not connecting with anybody right now. But the fact of the matter is, over the pandemic, I met people like you. I knew Jim Keen from beforehand, but we'd be together once a year, maybe. And then we're like seeing each other every other week. Or twice a week sometimes. And then same with Tom Leahy and Dan Miller and these other people who from all over the world and all over the country, I was in constant contact with, and we built up great relationships. One other thing that came out of the pandemic was what we call the Kind of Book Club, where there's a group of 4 of us that get together and we've gone through a bunch of different books, because we end up so much, we might start with a book, but then it gets into our lives. And it was a wonderful experience. And this summer in particular, I really felt the loss as everybody went back to their busy lives. And I was missing those connections. And that's what I missed the most. It's great to bring back that in person and the special things that happen as far as building connection. I know that there's some people out there that say, wow, virtual's awesome. We can get everything that we need done virtually. I'm like, well, it's more powerful than we think, but we still need to connect with people in person in the same room at times. We just have to make sure that we get full value out of those interactions.
Yeah, very much so. I actually loved the pandemic. In that sense of view, I didn't like being stuck inside and not being lockdowns and not being able to work and that concern. But I think I connected with more people that inspired me in a year and a half, or in a year in particular, than I had in a decade before.
And I hope we don't, and I'm working towards this, I hope we don't drop everything we learned over the pandemic just because we can go back to in person. But man, there were so many valuable lessons in that.
Very much so.
Yeah.
And I find myself now, it's so busy in person that I've neglected or haven't had time for the virtual. Well, and so the connections that you built up, you're now losing.
Yeah. But again, it's that songlines concept.
Absolutely.
And also I think learning, and this is a big thing from right now, the concept of margins, in that margins are where the creativity happens. Margin is where the restoration happens. And in a book, the margins is where you write your own thoughts.
Right.
And the problem with, and oftentimes if the book content goes all the way to the edges, if something goes wrong, you have no margin for error. And the idea is reframing how we use our margins now.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. And adapting both.
Yeah. So question number 2.
Question number 2. I remember you sent me your facilitator training handbook, and really grateful for that. And one of the things that you had in there was the 5 parts of your comfort zone, with comfort, fear, and growth, and spiritual, emotional, physical. And don't neglect any of those 5, because you might be strong physically, but you're in your fear emotionally or socially, etc. What would you change in that document after writing it now, and why?
I think it's not so much that particular model, because I think it's a really helpful entry point for that concept of wellness and wholeness. I think I would put more like, once that's out there, and I love, there's an exercise, I'm trying to find it, but this idea of when you overlay the comfort zone model with the comfort zone, growth zone, retreat zone. I actually add another one in the middle there that's called the don't waste my time zone, where you're boring people so much that it looks like they're in retreat. But then I overlay that with the wellness wheel or wellness concept.
Yes.
And I think that in and of itself, creating those 2 things together is so helpful. And when I train facilitators, I would spend more time emphasizing the importance of understanding the different comfort zones and what it looks like. So when you're talking about like emotional, outside your emotional comfort zone or emotional trauma, all that kind of stuff, that feeds into how you as a facilitator deal with that. You don't meet them in the emotional trauma. You support them in every other area so that they develop the skills to address the emotional trauma. Now, if they're in retreat, then you need to figure out a way to get them back into their comfort zone so that and then help them with, and this is where counseling and therapy comes in. What we do is therapeutic, but it's not therapy.
Yes.
And what we can do is, so if let's say they're having physical challenges, it's not about us solving the physical challenges. It's us supporting them in their emotional, intellectual, spiritual areas, in social areas. We support them there so that they have the capacity to address their challenges. And I think offering that perspective around it's both about the comfort zone model. And again, there's nothing magic about your comfort zone model or your wellness model. It's getting in your brain as a facilitator, as somebody who purports to impact people's lives, that what they're facing right now isn't what you faced in the same situation. And your job is to be present and kind as they're facing these challenges. And it's not about you solving the challenge for them. You let them walk and generate their story. And the danger is, too often what we do when we solve problems for people is we create a dependence, almost an addiction, on external factors to solve our problems. And that's not what we should be about. So and that's a great question. And what would I change on that? It wouldn't necessarily be the model itself. It would be how I take it deeper. I'm a big believer that models, I collect models and no model fits reality. But if I can switch things around and have it be a great entry point for understanding something, it's what you take past it. That's what I guess I'm saying.
Okay, lovely. No, I agree with you on that one. Thank you. Okay, then
last one.
Ooh. I'm an advocate for outdoor learning, outdoor education, Christian adventure learning. I see on many groups, particularly in the US, that there's a that it's been a really challenging year for many young people, particularly parents and camps, with numbers declining, with people not having so much interest in the outdoors as much as they did before, for whatever reason. And also parents really getting, not just helicopter parents now, as in, I don't want to even let my child out of the sight. Everything has to happen. I need to be constantly informed, which restricts freedom, restricts growth, and in some ways is a threat to the whole let's create managed risk and and perceived risk rather than physical risk to help you to grow and experience new things in the outdoors. What is your advice on how to continue to grow the industry and to keep it as something that we believe is important?
Yeah, I think that's a huge challenge. And I think the response is feeling a loss of control. A lot of people respond by trying to grab more control, even though it's illusion. They try and control more. So I think a big part of it is it actually goes across the board. It's this concept. It's not about time management or energy management. It's about self-awareness and self-management for the parents to understand what's going on, become aware of these stories they don't realize they're telling themselves about reality. And the idea that there's so many things that we're not aware of, these stories that impact our behavior, and we don't even realize it. So I think the first piece is raising these stories to consciousness, and helping everybody, not just parents, but kids and employees and lots of different places, to raise these unconscious stories to an awareness level, because you can't manage something you're not aware of. So if we can help, and it's not like your salespeople are doing therapy on people, and that's not the case. I think it's about how you are present in the industry and in the world and how you represent yourself. You have to help people feel safe about what they're doing, but you've also got to get into their heads about what we're doing is we're giving life skills for a better life. And part of what we're doing is teaching people this self-awareness and self-management, which is far better than any practical budgeting or all the stuff that we get that thinks is going to make our lives better has to start with servicing the stories we tell ourselves, becoming aware of where we're at, and then managing those things. I break it down into you need to be aware of your pace, your energy, and your focus. Those three things are like a graphic equalizer that when you step in, you can manage your life better when you understand where you're at and what's needed in any context. Now, for parents looking at the possibility or exploring outdoor and adventure stuff, it's a matter of realizing that you're trying to control something that's out of your control, and you're reinforcing a myth about it. And helping people understand hey, you can't control your child's life, even when they're just going off to elementary school. You've got to equip them to be able to handle the things at their depth. And the best way to do it is to send them on an adventure, whether it's in the outdoors in the wilderness, or how you view school as an adventure, and you give them the tools to navigate that adventure with the support that they need. So there's no easy fix on that. It's going to take some time. And we do find ourselves, at least in the world of camping and education, we find ourselves with a new mindset around the parents and the kids that are stepping into our world.
Yeah, it is a challenge, isn't it?
Yeah.
But for me, it just raises the level of saying we really need to prove to people, one, we are excellent at what we do. Secondly, that we have a good safety record. And thirdly, that we do care and we do try our best to make a difference, a positive impact in people's lives, and that impact will carry on. It's not so much about the certificate, it's about the character.
Well, and it's the old value proposition and a brand new one, which is, yes, it's fun. Camps and all this stuff is a blast and it's fun, but you go back to, ultimately, it all goes back to changed lives. And the value
Exactly.
proposition isn't just that we're changing lives, it's that we're equipping lives to live better. And perhaps
Yes.
it's the answer might be for camps to re-examine the value proposition they put out there and make sure that it is what their client base values.
And that's exactly what I said to the leadership team here at Chengela School at one stage. I said, we're in such a unique position, because if we talk about raising holistic children, but if your school is focused just on academics with very little exposure to the outdoors, or very little exposure to the world in a social sense of view of going to other communities, you are going to raise students who will go automatically into academic type of professions. They'll end up in the city.
Yeah.
If your school is focused on agriculture, let's say, as its predominant thing, or conservation or the outdoors, you're going to have people that are going to move towards outdoorsy type of industries, because that's the influence that they've had. If your school is very much focused on social justice and helping the poor and working with underprivileged communities, that's where you're going to raise doctors, and you're going to raise lawyers, and you're going to raise social workers and teachers. And we sit in such a unique situation here, where the school, Chengela, owns an outdoor center. It has strong academic grades, and it also is in some places involved in social justice and social needs. And the result of that is you actually give your students the ability to make a free choice.
Yeah. Well, and it's, to me, the power behind experiential approaches, not just outdoors or anything, but viewing the experience that you design is that you engage the whole person. Back to that 5-factor model. You engage the whole person so that you're growing a whole person. And you
Exactly.
realize that each experience will move people out of their comfort zone in different parts of the whole person, and you're able to address those specific challenges for those individuals and the group. So that, I mean, you hit it on the nail when you talk about the broader that you can address a whole person in their growth and development, the more likely they're going to make better judgments about their future.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah.
Very much.
So Alan, I want to thank you so much for spending this time with us. We're running out of time. I appreciate your questions of me, and I really appreciate your responses. So thank you very much. And I want to invite everybody to check out the Living Life Juicy and the Growing People channel. See if there might be some stuff for you. I'm totally interested in interviewing people who are living life juicy, who are being present and kind as they do great things. So if you have any suggestions, please drop in the comments on any of the channels. Love to do it. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to the next time we go live and live life juicy.
John, thank you for thank you for living life juicy, John.
My pleasure.
Get more out of life every day. Picture biting into a whole peeled orange. Not a timid bite, but a huge wide mouth bite. What if you lived your life like that? Living life juicy is what that life might be like. We explore how we be present and kind as we do great things.